Welcome to a football show hot read podcast extravaganza live from Mobile, Alabama at the 2025 Senior Bowl. There you go, folks. Welcome to the show brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and ML Rose, because this is a hot read podcast and a football show. And that is correct. You just saw the entire Chateau de Marty is what we're calling this. It's what they call it. And that is JT Ruhnke, of course, of the Hot Read Podcast, Broadway Sports Media. Nick Suss of the Tennessean, of course. You can catch him at Nick Suss on Twitter as well. So, boys, good to see you. Good to have you here. We are technically in the same room. I'm going to be on camera with Paulina over here. She is, scantily clad and ready to go and ready to party. So there you go. Otherwise, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today on the show to get you ready for this week of action. We've got the quarterbacks that are here. Should the Titans be interested in any of them? We've got talent that could be first-round grade, first-round value. There's about 20 of them or so. We'll get to those names, who the Titans should be targeting there. And, of course, we'll look at some of the sleepers and some of the positions of need of this team as we get started here in Mobile. Boys, how we doing? How was the trip down? Everybody good? Everybody excited about prospects and football and practice and all that good stuff?
I'm so excited. I saw so many offensive linemen come in at above the 34 arm length mark. So, I'm ready. I'm ready to roll this week.
And I definitely know what that means. And the significance of it and why people should care about the inch length of an arm. I'm still seeing I-65 in my dreams after that long drive, and I haven't quite gotten out of that mindset. But yeah, let's talk about football.
I'm excited, and we have people in the comments here. Team Ramrod saying Paulina got me feeling some kind of way. I mean, that's just the Senior Bowl. That's the energy I want here as Braden.
I'm just saying she needs more clothing. And if you want to turn Nick's microphone up, that would be helpful so we can hear what the great Nick Suss has to say about stuff. 65. It's a long drive down. Look, I flew in from Atlanta, and it was all just big, large dudes on a plane. Like you can tell when you're leaving a regular flight to go to a location where football things are happening. And it's all a bunch of huge dudes with like different NFL logos and a bunch of media folks, rap sheets sitting up in the first class, those fancy guys up there. So you could tell we were getting ready to come do some football stuff, though. So it was going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot of stuff to get to today. Sinkers Beverages, as well as Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and ML Rose, of course, sponsor of the Hot Read Podcast. So other than that, everybody's here. We're ready to go. What are you guys most looking forward to? We'll get started with that. How about that, JT?
I'm looking forward to, on my show on Tuesday, or I guess it was Tuesday or whenever it was, Friday. That's what it is. The days blend together. But we can talk so much like we're going to about how there is a decent crop of first round talent here this week that I think is really, really important because as we all know, even at the 101, there's still so much possibility of wherever they could move in this draft. But like I said, I got to stick to my guns with the prediction I made already on January, whatever it was, 24th, that I think whoever the Titans end up taking in the second round is at Mobile this week. And I think that's where I'm most excited to really dig in deep and look at these prospects that can become impact players in the second round for this team.
Yeah, I'd say the thing I'm probably most excited for anytime we're at an event like this is just the one-on-ones. DBs against receivers, DBs, and then O-line, D-line, one-on-ones. I just like geeking out about that stuff. That stuff is way too much fun to watch, especially with how many great offensive linemen and defensive linemen we're going to see this year. The receivers and DBs might not be as exciting as they were last year, but we're going to have a ton of fun watching the O-line, D-line stuff.
And one of the things I learned, I think, starting with recruiting like 20 years ago and then coming up through into the Senior Bowl now, and I think what you get is you get good on good, which doesn't happen a whole lot for like G5 players. So for like Mike Green, who's very productive out of Marshall, very good player, but he didn't go up against elite level offensive tackles every single game for 4 years in college. It's just a slightly different situation. You see that with when all the best players come together in one place, you're getting good on good, and that's where you can learn about, an offensive lineman from North Dakota State. Like, we'll see if that kind of player, what he can do against high level competition. And I when we talk to scouts, that's what they're looking at, is how well do you rise to the occasion against guys that you don't normally face.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You kind of talk about the big one there. Mike Green is going to be one of the most interesting prospects. And then you also have a lot of these wide receivers this time around, like you were saying, and Nick, you were saying how the offensive line versus defensive line matchups are going to be really, really interesting this year. I think that's kind of flipped on its head from last year when you had guys like Quinyon Mitchell and Ricky Pearsall and all of these different guys, going at it. It's going to be totally flipped this year. And I think that's what makes this week just so interesting to me.
Let's start with the quarterbacks, just kind of get this out of the way, because obviously none of these guys are going to be 1.1 guys or maybe even first round. Although Jalen Milroe, I think the star of the show as far as the quarterbacks go here that are in town and that are going to be going in terms of high-level draft picks. Look, Jackson Dart measured at 6'1", I think, today, so that's about right. Also needs to prove that he can run an offense that's not, Lane Kiffin's offense, which, again, I think he's capable of it. We'll see. Dylan Gabriel, what was Dylan Gabriel's – how tall was Dylan Gabriel?
I think he was 5'10" and an inch or quarter.
That tracks. Yeah. That tracks. You've got I think the one that I would keep an eye on, and I don't know for the Titans necessarily, but I think in general – Tyler Shuck is going to be a guy that I think at the end of the week people are talking about. I don't know if that means he goes from like undrafted to round 5 or from round 6 to round 4. I don't know what it means exactly, and I don't think the Titans are going to be in on him anywhere in the first 100 picks. But this is a guy at 6. I don't have exact measurements in front of me, but in college he's listed like 6'4", 220 or so. He's probably a little smaller than that in reality. This is a good athlete, just hurt most of his career. If he's healthy, he's very productive every step of the way of his career.
Quick, every college that Tyler Shuck went to, go.
Oregon, Texas Tech, Louisville. Yeah.
Is that it? I thought there was
a fourth. That's it.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Fact check us if we're wrong.
I think that's it. Alex says that's a spooky costume. Kenneth says if we assume quarterback is number 1, is there a prospect at the top of round 2 to look at? I think what we're going to learn a lot this week, and we're kind of going all over the place here, but I think a lot of the things that JT, you said we're going to see today is a bunch of names that are here, not a lot of top 10 picks, not a lot of top 15 picks in the draft, but like 20 different guys that are in that, let's say 15 to 40 range. And honestly, that's a really good group of players for Titans fans to be looking at and paying attention to.
And it's a lot of good players at positions of need, whether it is the offensive tackle position with a lot of these guys like Membo. I don't think Connerly will be there. The one Savia out of Arizona, which I can't pronounce his name yet. I'm still working on that pronunciation.
Nick, do you know?
Jonah Savia, I don't know. From Arizona, his arm length came in, which is kind of the big thing. And you were talking about why it matters so much. We come into this the last 2 years kind of talking about these guys of what makes a tackle or a guard. We had the conversation with Peter Skronsky last year. I know for our show specifically, the funniest moment of the Senior Bowl last year was when Jordan Morgan's arms came in below 34 inches and Stoney Keeley dropped to his knees in a Walmart because he knew that the tackle dream for Jordan Morgan was over. But you got a lot of guys who had that kind of designation of, are they going to be a tackle? Could they project more inside? And you're seeing a lot of the measurables come back good for them. So I think that's big for the second round in the Titans. And then the edge position. There are so many good edges here this week at the Senior Bowl where, that's going to be the spot right now where if they end up going quarterback at the 101, the second most pressing need on this team right now is at that edge position. You're going to get a really good look at those guys who are going to be there in that range.
Agreed, Nick, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, we can quibble all day about whether edge is the team's biggest need, second biggest need. I'd put it as the biggest need. And I've advocated in the past on this show, on the Tennessean, pick it in the first round, pick it in the second round. This is the kind of draft where if you're trying to create surplus value, you're going to have a lot of options. And if it's Abdul Carter at 1-1, if it's trading back for a James Pierce or trading back for a Michael Williams or somebody like that, in early to mid first round, you can do that. And then that's where the Landon Jacksons and Jack Sawyers and JT Tuamoliau and Princely Emmanuel and all of these edge rush prospects who could be there in the second round, some of whom are here in Mobile this week, not all of them.
Uman Mielen.
I don't know if I'll get JTT right, but I know I can get Uman Mielen right.
We can all get JTT right though. Yeah. We can stick with that.
Thomas.
Landon Jackson is here as well.
Here.
That's a guy that's probably not first round, but close. Could grade out if he moves up the board. Very tall. He's a very tall human.
Deion Walker is a guy who I think people were talking about as a first-round pick very early in the process. Might have fallen down the draft boards, but could obviously rise back up with that talent. He's here. A lot of guys. Nick Scorton's here. I think he's probably more of a first-round pick.
Yep.
Shamar, is Shamar Turner?
Both Shamars are here.
Which one is the one with the first round grade?
The Shamar Stewart is the other edge, but
both.
There's two. There's a Shamar Turner who's like the defensive tackle of Texas A&M, who is like right now around the third, fourth round, like late day 2, early day 3, and then you have his teammate Shamar Stewart, who is up there with Nick Scorton. There's a lot of Texas D linemen in this draft that the Titans, I think Titans fans should really get to know because I think they're a real possibility.
There's also a Shamar linebacker out of Florida whose last name I don't know. There's 3 Shamars at the Senior Bowl.
These are the important things. Again, Nick Suss playing the role of Paul Kaharski with his words and Stoney Keeley with his look and vibe. That is what he's doing with the flow because now Stoney's hair is shorter, apparently. I heard he got a haircut. I saw that he got a haircut.
He got it. Call him Samson. The way all of it is basically gone.
All of his content sucks now. Like it's just,
well, we haven't seen it yet, but I would disagree about that. But we'll see.
I don't know. Friday show was average.
I just meant more the hair.
I'm just saying.
The Friday show was average. He was average. JT on Friday. I'm assuming it's because it was his hair.
Okay.
Check out the Hot Read podcast on Tuesdays and Fridays and every day this week, as well as a football show brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, as well as Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and ML Rose. Thank you to all 3 of those sponsors for allowing us to be here and helping support these all these wonderful people. Of course, we'll have lots of stuff for you, Nick. I'm sure you got some writing coming up. Do you want to go ahead and promote what you're working on here before we continue to talk about the Senior Bowl?
I mean, draft stuff. We're going to talk about all of it. I can't think of anything specific that people need to know right now.
All right, Paulina, what do you have coming? Okay. All right. So here's the deal. I want to the other than it sounds like you guys don't agree with my Tyler Shuck case. I think Jalen Milroe is the best quarterback here. Is there anybody else worth talking about?
If Will Howard was here, I'd say it's worth talking, but unfortunately, he's not going to, and that's the unfortunate case. I will say Jackson Dart's intriguing to me. Dylan Gabriel, like we said, the measurements are just not there to the point where I not on my radar. But yeah, I think the unfortunate one where I do think that if there was a quarterback that would have been worth something for Titans fans to keep their eyes on in terms of if they wouldn't go quarterback at the 101 and maybe look at that early day 3 talent, I think Will Howard could have been there. Now, unfortunately, like we've seen this week, he won't be participating, but like he would be the one for me, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, I will say that I say during every draft season, you can really tell the divide of who watches college football for pleasure and who watches college football for draft prep processes. Because like, if you watch college football purely for the draft prep, Jackson Dart's a 5th round pick. If you watched college football for pleasure in these last 3 years, I do sincerely believe Jackson Dart's probably QB3 in this class and could argue up into QB2 just on the fact of, oh man, ball go far, ball look pretty in air. Now, the receivers were always...
Many yards.
Yeah, the receivers were always open. And Jim Nagy was just joking about this at his press conference to kick off the Senior Bowl. He walked up to Jackson Dart earlier today and said, hey, you're going to have to throw into some windows here. Like, there are going to be some tight windows. I know you're not used to that. But, I mean, just on pure arm talent and the way he gets rid of the ball, I could see Dart being 1B this week with Milroe being 1A. But I don't know. Yeah, it's not going to be last year's quarterback group when we were looking at Bo Nix and Michael Penix. And was McCarthy here?
McCarthy wasn't, but... So. The guy who's going to end up being the best in that class, Spencer Rattler, was here as well. So.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler was here. He's going to be.
The agenda is alive and well. Boys.
Where would Spencer Rattler be ranked in this quarterback class?
2, 1,
2, 1. Like I mean, which is crazy.
You guys both sound so convicted.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like did you bring up what Jim Nagy said? Did I miss that?
No,
yet?
I'll bring that up. I mean, one of the other things Jim said in the press conference just now was he doesn't believe there is a quarterback in this draft class that would have been drafted higher than any of the 6 in the first round last year. And he wasn't coming out throwing fireballs at Shedeur or Cam Ward or anything. Like, he's saying that there are serviceable quarterbacks. This is a deep quarterback class, down to Riley Leonard, down to Quinn Ewers. There are guys who will get a chance to play quarterback in the NFL. But if you're talking about 1-1 talent, if any of those 6 were coming out this year, Bo Nix would have been ahead of them. J.J. McCarthy would have been ahead of them. Obviously, Drake May and Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and these types would have been ahead of them. So I don't know. You can pick the quarterback 1-1 because it's the most valuable position, or you can create surplus value out of picking the greatest value. And that's the conversation we'll have this entire draft prep.
I don't necessarily agree with the number from Jim on like 6 or 5 or 4 or however many guys it actually would be ranked. But Alex says this in the comments. So the Titans should not take a quarterback. Pretty simple. I tend to agree with that. I think I've been saying that for the longest time here. Number 1 overall, either you trade back, and if you add a bunch of picks, then maybe it's okay to draft Shedeur or Cam Ward and take a risk. I think Nick, you and I might have been talking about this when we basically if they had hired a new coach and they were sort of building an entirely new identity around Jalen Milroe. I love Jalen Milroe, but I don't think that's what they're doing. I think Brian Callahan wants a different set of skills. Tyler Shuck, by the way, 6'4" and 7/10, 224. Very good athleticism. Again, I think he's going to be a name that people are talking about at the end of the week as improving his stock, but I don't think it's going to be more than going from like a 5th to a 3rd at best case scenario.
And just to answer Stoney's question, it's pronounced like corn, right? You shuck it?
Shuck.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So there you go.
It's pronounced Shuck. That's great. I didn't see up there. He's been hitting so many comments in there. Breakerhead Snake says Jaden Higgins is a god. I like all the receivers from Iowa State. I like both of them. Noel, I like Jalen Higgins. I like Noel better, but I like both of them. I think they're both pretty good.
That's another thing I wanted to say about this Senior Bowl crop. I like the slot receivers a lot. Like
Xavier Restrepo,
even down to like Jeremiah Pritchett out of South Alabama, if you want to get incredibly geeky about very productive Sunbelt receivers.
Shop local, Nick.
Yeah.
Shop local.
You always got to throw out one Mobile native South Alabama player, something like that. I think he's from Birmingham or whoever knows, South Carolina, wherever he's from. But yeah, local, very, very productive college slot receiver.
Team Ramrod asked, and he mentions Bo Nix, and one of the things I was thinking about while listening to JT and you and Stoney talk about what Callahan has sort of added to the equation on quarterback evaluation, which is accuracy and processing are the two things he loves. He met with Shedeur and he talked about this. I believe this was with Easton's interview, and he basically used the phrase, nervous system. He needs to have a good nervous system. He added timing in there as well. And what was interesting to me is Bo Nix, I feel like, got a really – they knocked him for not having a big arm in college, throwing in a small offense, short, quick passes. But if you go back and watch a lot of those throws, there were a lot of throws that were deep over the middle. He wasn't Matt Stafford throwing deep out routes, but like he made a lot of throws. But you know what he did really, really well? He processed, he was accurate, and he timed it up really well for a long time in college. And I want to know who that player is with those skills in this draft. Jackson Dart might be that guy, but like he's not Bo Nix. No, he's not close to Bo Nix.
No, I mean the closest to that guy, I think we would agree is Shedeur.
I think you're right on that.
When you listen back to everything this week, as nice, you look back and you're like, it seems like Shedeur, and you talk about these things with the accuracy, but the biggest missing piece there, which continues to make this such a discussion, is Shedeur's lack of presence over the middle in those throws. And that's something I think with Bo Nix and what even made J.J. McCarthy so attractive last year is their ability to throw over the middle and do it consistently in those types of offenses that made them such a high regarded pick in where they eventually went. And so
yeah,
I think the accuracy, you can say that, but still, like we're saying, you still probably would take a Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy right now over these two prospects at the top, or even the Jackson Dart or someone like that.
But I also think we have the tendency to over-intellectualize this conversation because, like, there was a reason that Caleb Williams was still drafted ahead of any of those guys. Because the most important thing is how talented are you? And the shortcomings that Bo Nix still has and the shortcomings that J.J. McCarthy still has, is projectability into that future of can you be that top tier upper echelon player? And there's a difference of like, look, if the Titans didn't have Will Levis on roster last year and they were picking 7th overall, would they have liked a Bo Nix or a JJ McCarthy? I think they would have liked those guys. But if the Titans didn't have them on roster last year and were picking 1st overall, even if Caleb Williams doesn't profile as the high accuracy, high processing guy that you want, you still take him because he's the best prospect. And so the question is there a quarterback prospect or is there an overall prospect that fits that bill of is clearly the best? Because that still needs to be the first criteria more than, oh, does he process the way I like to?
I can't remember exactly who said it, but in the comment section was basically like, how many picks does this team need to come away with? And look, we've already covered this. Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi, they believe in 30 picks over 3 years, 12 top 100 picks. Well, they have 23 total and they have 8 in the top 100. That means trade down and collect a bunch of picks. I do think to y'all's point earlier about who's here at this event, because I mentioned Jackson Dart as who's this year's Bo Nix, and I was kind of inside in my head, I was thinking just Senior Bowl, right? Like who's here that has some of those things. And I agree. I think Shedeur is the guy that can do that. I would have Shedeur ahead of Cam Ward. I don't think it's close, but I don't think either of them is worth the top pick. And I don't want us to get wrapped around the axle on that because it feels like we're going to have like 4 straight months of this discussion.
It's a hard discussion to get away from. Yeah.
Honestly, I think Stoney, if you're still watching, I think you and JT did a great job sort of highlighting the concerns that I have about Cam Ward on y'all's conversation on Hot Read on Friday. So I think there's too many bad throws, too many out of the system throws, too many I'm trying to make something happen throw, which Nick and I have talked about is very similar to what they just had. I think he can work some of that out of his game, but Sanders is the guy of those two that I would take. But again, I'm talking 9, 10, 11, 12 if you're doing it once you've added a bunch of extra picks. Because, and I think you guys were talking about, I think JT, you might have said this on Hot Read. You said, like, there's a lot of good 2nd and 3rd round picks in this class. The strength of this draft, and a lot of them are here at Mobile, the strength of this class is kind of like picks 20 to 80. And that's where you get edge. You can get edge. You can get offensive line. You could get a safety if you need one in the 4th round. You got to get extra top 100 picks. And you move down to the Browns or to the Raiders or to the Giants or to the Jets, and you can get.
That's so sad. I'm sorry. Stoney just said no Cam Scatabo this week, according to Brugler. I'm falling to my knees.
Big bummer. Yeah,
I'm falling to my knees at a Walmart right now because that's
way nicer than a Walmart.
I'm
an Alabama Walmart or a Mississippi Walmart, a Tennessee Walmart. What kind of Walmart are we talking about? Why was he in a Walmart reading Jordan Morgan arm measurements?
It's a Gen Z saying, I think.
It is?
Yes.
I took it very literally too.
I did too.
Okay. It's like
fell to his knees in a Walmart is a thing the kids are saying?
Yes.
Fucking kids.
The kids need better. Yeah, there's got to be better slang than that.
Nick, you're a writer. You could do better right now off the top of your head than that.
Yeah, you want to just name establishments?
No cap. All right.
Aldi.
Okay.
Fell to my knees in an Aldi. No Cam Scatterboot is a big bummer. That's a big bummer. He's a cult hero.
Sorry
sure.
to get us off track. That
what was I talking about?
But
top 100 picks.
If
you get an extra pick in the 30s, extra pick in the 60s, extra pick in the 90s, a lot of those guys that are here today are the guys you could be looking at.
It's so tough, right? Because I felt like the draft last year also was very much like that, and it's yet another year where last year you don't have that 3rd round pick where you get a lot of guys. Like I really thought that if the Titans would have had a 3rd round pick, Dominic Pooney could have been a guy that they really wanted. He was a great guy, like from the Senior Bowl last year, who ends up projecting really well in that San Francisco system. Could he have been kicked outside to the right tackle and helped there this year? Could have been. Same kind of scenario this year where you don't have that 3rd round pick because of the L'Jarius Sneed trade. And you are seeing yet another draft here where you're going to find some of the gems of, set and forget from day one starting caliber talent in that round where you just don't have the capital, which I think is yet another frustrating part of where the Titans are, which further, kind of gets us into that conversation of why it may be so vital for this team to trade back from the 101 and get more picks.
Brinkerhead says, if you can't trade back, who do you draft? That's the question. I think I've said this. I think, Nick, you've agreed with me. There's only one player who is a generational talent, quote unquote, that, to use the Titans front office terminology there. Travis Hunter's that player. I do think Abdul Carter is very close to that good. And if you can get either of those two / QB you love at pick 3, for example, I still think you can get one of those guys and trade down. I mean, if there is no trade partner and you are stuck at 1, I understand taking the risk on the quarterback over Hunter or a Carter, who both make your team better immediately. I think I would lean Carter over all of them, actually.
I don't have my Geek Corner sign, but I'll just play us in with some theme song, Geek Corner, whatever. I looked this up. It's only one person scouting site, but if you look at ESPN Scouts Inc., because it has the longest archives, in the last 9 drafts, 8 of those 9 drafts, there has been an edge rusher graded as better than Abdul Carter. The only draft that didn't have one was the 2021 draft where Micah Parsons was not graded as an edge rusher, so it didn't count.
Same number, same school, same position.
So, when you talk about, is this guy a 1-1 generational talent? We have to have a long enough memory to know there's one of these guys in every draft. But we also have to have a smart enough acknowledgement of they work out almost every time. With the exception of Chase Young, I think the first edge rusher picked in just about every draft in the last 10 years has turned out to be a dude. And yeah, the Lions should have, or the Jaguars should have picked Aiden Hutchinson over Trayvon Walker. That was a 1-2 situation, whatever. But if you look at the guy who was actually graded as the 1-1 prospect, more often than not, Myles Garrett turns into Myles Garrett, and Aiden Hutchinson turns into Aiden Hutchinson, and Micah Parsons turns into Micah Parsons, and Nick Bosa turns into Nick Bosa. And we see that happen over and over again. So if you're trying to say, what is the thing at 1-1, to answer that question, was it Brinkerhead Snake who asked it?
Brinkerhead Snake, yeah.
To answer that question, if you're thinking about what is the thing that is most likely to work out, picking an edge rusher near the top of the draft is the closest thing you can get in this situation to a sure thing. But if you think that Travis Hunter can play 120 snaps a game in the NFL, you take him in a heartbeat.
He can't. Nobody
if
can.
you think he can, you take him. I'm not saying I think
boys, do me a favor, both of you. Put your eyes on the camera where the audience is. On the camera. Put your eyes on the camera, Nick. On your camera. Get your eyes on the camera. Travis Hunter cannot play both ways full-time in the NFL. Nobody can. Nick Westbrook-Akine told us that.
Okay, but what if he can?
I think he could help this team at receiver unless you're already punting on Chidobe Awuzie. Unless you're already punting on not bringing back McCreary. I don't know what other things have to happen for me to think that he's a full-time corner for this team. And he's not better. He's not more of a need than Abdul Carter, honestly. And I like Hunter. I think I voted for him for the Heisman. I think he's an elite player.
In every way, I agree with everything you've said. But if you do have the opportunity to draft 2 players at once, you draft 2 players at once. Now, do they think he can do that? Probably not. I don't think anyone thinks he can. But we do have to acknowledge, if you can draft 2 players at once, that's worth using the first pick.
Factually, you're not wrong.
Yeah, Travis Hunter for me is such an interesting one. And the thing is, I do think at the next level, if he had to pick a side, it should, for my money's worth, be at the cornerback position over the wide receiver position. That's just where his traits and his athletic ability kind of translate better, I think, to the next level for me. Now, if you really do believe that he could turn into a wide receiver that is worth kind of investing that capital with some of the plus side of the other side of the ball, it's just that, like you said, you have so many corners right now on this team that make it, for me, such a hard sell.
I think the issue, and look, Alex kind of alludes to this a little bit. If he plays both ways, he won't last half a season. I'm not going to go there because I think he's very tough. Like Shedeur Sanders, also extremely tough. What I think the problem is that if you grade him as just a receiver, and this is to your point, Nick, if you grade him as just a receiver, he's a little undersized, very dynamic. He's kind of a slot guy. He's 185 pounds. He's very, very good, and I think that's his position that he can contribute sooner, whether that's return game or receiving, whatever. If you grade him out as just a corner, he is not going to grade out like Sauce Gardner. He's not going to be a true, pure lockdown, can play in every scheme. Denard Wilson wants to roll him up. I don't think you can grade him as an athlete. He's 99. But you can't grade him even above a 90 at either one of the 2 positions. And like Hines Ward, I'd love to go back and look at how many snaps, some of the Champ Bailey, Charles Woodson, I don't know why I said Hines Ward, other Georgia player.
Heinsworth did play multiple positions.
Okay. If you go back and look at the guys that, again, is there anybody on who would be more of a two-way player than Champ Bailey or Charles Woodson in the NFL?
Dion would be the closest comparison.
Okay, so a previous generation, but that's fair. How many of those three? I'd love to go back and look at their snap counts.
Yeah, I mean,
if
you're talking about in the pros, Dion was only a two-way player full-time for one season. I think it was 96 with the Cowboys. He had like 35 of his career catches, and I think he had 60 in his career. So there was one season where he was playing that, what people talk about with Hunter, that 15 to 20 a game. But the point to be made, when we use the term generational talent, that should mean once in a generation. So if he's the only guy who's capable of doing it, that does not refute the fact that he is generational. Now, is anybody capable of doing that? We don't know. It has not been tried since Chuck Bednarik. But like, is it worth a try? I don't know.
Look, I do agree that he is the best player of the game of football in this draft class, and that he makes your team better, probably more than everybody else. History is also the greatest indicator of the future, and you just used Chuck Bednarik in a piece of analysis.
I did.
The odds are this guy is okay. How about best case scenario is like an 80-20 guy, where you can play all of one side and like 20-25% of the other side. Is that worth taking at number one, JT?
Maybe if you are truly believing that 80% in the Titans case, if you're truly believing that in the Titans case, that 80% or that one side is at wide receiver, and if you're thinking that this guy grades out as a better wide receiver than Tet McMillan, than Luther Burden at the next level, then I think it's worth it. I don't.
I would take Luther Burden over Travis Hunter if you were playing them both at receiver.
I would too.
And now we get into the way too much putting on one guy's load thing, but the special teams aspect too, of if he's also your return man, that does shore up a hole this team has had for 27 years.
And I do want to be clear, JT, I want to go back to you, but Brinkerhead's sort of defending Travis Hunter as a starting. I'm not suggesting that he's only a slot receiver. Like I don't think that's the case. I think he's a very, very good receiver. I think he's probably the best receiver on the team the second he gets drafted. So I'm not disagreeing with what Mr. Snake is saying here.
Yeah, it's just, once again, he's such a interesting prospect for me to really look at in terms of the 101 for this team, where they are right now. It just is a hard sell for me coming to where they are right now with where they are in the team building process, the prospects they still need to bring in at other positions right now that you could make a case. There are more, like you said, with an Abdul Carter, a more surefire thing right away at a position of greater need right now. I think that's where my mind goes at the 101.
I would take Abdul Carter right now today if I was forced to pick at the number one slot. I would take Carter.
I'd agree.
I'd agree.
All right, look at that.
If you are wrong about Travis Hunter and he ends up being the thing we're saying,
sure,
I hear you. No, I hear you.
It's passing on Shohei Ohtani. It's like, oh, nobody's done it since Babe Ruth. You're revoking Babe Ruth, and then he did it. So what if he can do it?
Shohei Ohtani and Chuck Bednarik. That's what I like.
I'm just saying, what if he can do it?
Make sure you swing by, for those of you back in Nashville, swing by Sinkers Beverages for all your beverage needs. You got, of course, the big game coming up. You got Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages for all of your Super Sunday needs. They will take care of you. Smoked wings, ribs, you name it, pulled pork. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue will take care of you, so make sure you swing by there. If you want to go on a Saturday morning for some happy hour, ML Rose has 2-for-1 beers, bubbly, you got champagne, you got Bloody Marys, all kinds of 2-for-1s. So make sure you check out ML Rose as well. And Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue.
Here's one thing real quick on ML Rose that I want to get, mostly Nick's idea, but we've been workshopping.
He's in there all the time winning trivia contests, aren't you, Nick?
No.
Oh, okay.
Down the road. I won't sponsor a rival company.
Wonderful. But they have a burger of the month, and our Hot Read chat has been trying to workshop their next burger of the month, which we want to be the Borgonzi burger. And now that we've learned that he's from Boston, what should we put on it?
It needs a cheese that's like a gorgonzola, right? Like,
yeah,
it needs some sort of cheese that sounds like his name.
We first went with like an Italian style, and then we realized he's from Boston. And so the best one we came up with is that you have to serve it with a Sam Adams, and you have to have some sort of some sort of cheese, and then we're putting it on
some sort of cheese. That's a
putting it on a
revolutionary idea on a burger. How about a lobster? Like, can you do a lobster burger? Like some
like
sort
a
of
lobster patty?
a lobster. Well, lobster roll is what you go to Boston and get, right? You go get
Yeah.
lobster roll. So like some sort of lobster burger combo platter, like a surf and turf burger
I'd be in.
with some gorgonzola cheese.
I'd be in.
I don't know. Thoughts?
That does not sound like it tastes very good if you're putting on
Not important.
gorgonzola and donuts. I love it. Throw some lobster bisque on there as a topping.
It's a lobster bisque drizzle on top of an ML Rose patty. Oh my God. Okay. So you mentioned edge would be, Nick, ahead of the other positions of need for you, ahead of quarterback. And I would agree with that. I think you can get receiver later. They have at least one receiver on the team that's productive. If you don't get another receiver in the offseason, you can, in theory, re-sign NWI, and he's serviceable. You kind of know what he is. I don't know how many more days Harold Landry's going to be on the team, but they don't have another player at that position. They're thinner. It's harder to get. They don't have as many backup options in free agency. So I think edge is number one. I think offensive line, because you can get those guys in round 2 and 3 and maybe sign somebody in the offseason, I think offensive line is number 3. So if I went edge, receiver, and O-line with quarterback sort of being removed from it because it's its own thing, is that the order? And are those the players you're most interested in this week down here in Mobile?
I'd put right tackle slightly ahead of receiver. I don't know how you feel about that.
I would too.
Yeah.
Just based on the talent that's here, the wide receiver class this year certainly is way different than it was last year. I think it's a lot different. We saw 8 receivers go in the top 40. I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's
Brian Thomas was the 4th, and he was just out inside the top 20. Xavier Worthy,
Ricky Pearsall, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk. Like, there were so many last year. It just doesn't feel like that. Like, if you're projecting a Jalen Polk last year, right now there's like in the top 40. Like, your next guy that's going to be there right now is
Trey Harris
or Matthew Golden.
Yeah. And so that's
Golden's
right now
flying up boards.
He really is. And it feels like it's just not the same. So right now, where you're picking right now, based on the value they have, I'm with you that I think right tackle and the prospects there are more of a pick at their positional value right there.
But I will say the flip side of it is, if you're trying to think about the free agency strategies that Borgonzi and Brinker favor, it is much more likely to find the gritty veteran leader type as a right tackle and draft the receiver than it is to do the inverse, especially when you're talking about Brinker and Reggie McKenzie and the people from that Green Bay model who love picking receivers in the second round. It's kind of their favorite thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
So if somebody falls, I think we can all agree at this point that Ibuka is going to be in the first round, and obviously McMillan and Burden will be in the first round. But if Trey Harris or Matthew Golden or one of those guys is sitting at 35, I wouldn't be shocked if they've already signed the guy they intend to start at right tackle in free agency. Yeah. And then you trade back, you get an extra 3rd round pick, and Marcus Mbow, you think he'll be in the 3rd round? Maybe. Like, you can get a right tackle, Emory Jones. Emory
Jones, yeah. I like him, actually. There's a lot of good, I don't want to say utility offensive linemen because that sounds like an insult. It's not meant to be. It's quality guard or tackles prospects between picks 40 and 100. There's a lot of really good ones in this draft. I think there's a lot of good names all across the board. I'll get you guys to use a few of those names in a minute. But I think there's a lot of guys that are going to get drafted there. I love Emeka Ibuka. I think that is a bona fide starting NFL receiver for 10 years. And if you trade back if you do the big trade back, which is not likely but possible, and you're picking 12, let's say, I think you can do a lot worse than taking Emeka Ibuka. I think that guy's a guaranteed professional starting football player for a long time. I do like of the receivers here, they are a lot of guys that you're going to be looking at for later on. I do like the kid out of Stanford, the Ayo Manor guy, big body, pro style guy. I think he's got a chance to be very impressive this week, and he could be the guy that works himself into the Trey Harris realm, which is like early 2nd, late 1st round pick.
He does a lot of the things you want right now for a team like the Titans. He really does well with separating downfield and using that size that he has. I think when you're getting in front of the sticks or at the 15, that's where you're having your trouble with him, and maybe that's why he's staying outside the first round. But he possesses a lot more intrigue than just he's big and fast because of the way he uses his body to separate, which I think is the most interesting part of his game for me. And I like him a lot this week. Xavier Restrepo is also another one. I think he projects a lot more on the inside, but much like last year's darling of this week, either like a Lad McConkey or Roman Wilson was someone who stole the show last year. He could be a guy who really pops this week. And then the biggest boom or bust for me in terms of the wide receiver position is what Savion Williams can be. What does he project more as? Was that talent that he possessed more a byproduct of what TCU had going on there last year, or is that really who he is? I think those are the three for me that I'm most excited to see this week.
Yeah, big body, does a lot of things in that offense. Williams, we got to see if he's polished enough to start and contribute right away. Jason says, should they consider a top end receiving tight end over a wide receiver given the value? Not a great tight end class outside of the top 2 in the first round. They're not going to be picking unless they're trading down to 18 or something, and he's by far their best available. I can't imagine that Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland are on their radar right now. I do really like Gunnar Helm. If you got extra picks and you've traded back and you've added a bunch of things and you're looking at where the wide receiver class drops off, which could be right around that 50-60 range, and the tight end class starts to become more attractive. I do think Gunnar Helm is a really good player at Texas. I saw the measurement. The kid out of Clemson, all-time leading tight end receiver in Clemson history. He checked in, I think, at 6'5". Briningstool, very productive player in a kind of a pro-style offense. He was bigger than I expected him to be. And I like Terrence Ferguson. I think the kid out of Oregon is, he's not explosive. He's not going to be a difference maker, but I think he's a really dependable player.
And for what it's worth, if you're looking for an alternative receiving option, one of the things Jim Nagy said at his intro presser a minute ago is he believes there are 30 draft graded running backs in this class. If you are talking about a skill position where there is going to be a surplus of them in the late rounds, if you're sitting with your 6th round pick or your 7th round pick and you've addressed all of your needs, if you want an extra toy to play with, that's a place to go get a running back who can catch some passes.
I love this class. It's like I have trouble because I find myself studying it and getting into it and tracking it, and then I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't. If you told me that they had Damian Martinez in the 6th round, who is like a 245-pound bulldozer who played at Oregon State and then went to Miami, great player. You put him with Pollard as a package duo. He's not a great pass catcher like you're saying, Nick, but there's so many of these guys that are so versatile.
Woody Marks in the 6th round.
Love Woody Marks. Yeah. Love Woody Marks. Big fan. So look, I think the running back class is great. Let me ask you this: if we went edge 1st round, offensive line 2nd round, receiver 3rd round, is that the right strategy, generally speaking?
Getting a 3rd round pick is certainly the right strategy. I would go that order. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty much there as well. It really just depends, though. Ultimately, right? Getting that 3rd is going to be so crucial because I think it really does. If you don't get that 3rd, it means you're taking a quarterback, which then means you're getting one or the other of the offensive tackle or edge. And yeah, I think it all comes down to how vital the trade back scenarios are going to be this time around. But if I did, I think you're going to find for what it's worth, the best positional value right now in this class is edge, tackle, wide receiver.
I guess I need to clarify. I sort of meant that order in that range of the draft, but also, and you guys can tell me, I am assuming that this team is not taking a quarterback with the 1st overall pick and that they're trading back. Like I'm not even my brain doesn't allow me to consider something else. I know that we've just talked about it for 20 minutes, but like, am I wrong for just assuming that that's what they're going to be trying to do here?
No, it's not. But also, like, it's so interesting because it feels like we're kind of going into this situation of like what we saw in 2021 with a lot of these quarterbacks. But it's going to be so interesting to see where throughout this week and throughout the rest of the draft cycle, where media consensus and team consensus come on, where exactly these quarterbacks should go. And I think then once you get that more clear picture, because right now it's so impossible for me to think that either of these quarterbacks are worth the 101. So I'm with you on that. But at the same time, how much is that going to that discrepancy that maybe we saw with the 2021 class? Could we be surprised? And as much as people want to hype up these quarterbacks this cycle, are we going to see just like 2021 where these teams were kind of calling that bluff and we don't see one go until like the mid 10s, where I think they probably would be more properly rated in a different class, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that. Sinkers Beverages, ML Rose, and Shotgun Blaze Barbecue. I'm going to rattle through some of these guys that are graded fringe first, early second round picks. Titans are going to be picking right there, of course, at 35. We think they could also trade back from that spot. Also, it's not just the first pick that you could trade back with. That's another strong idea. I'd like to know, of all these names, who are the names that you are sort of most interested to watch this week? I already mentioned Ayomanor. I think he's a guy who's right there in that conversation. Josh Connerly at Oregon is a guy that I think might be the best offensive tackle in this week of practice. We'll keep an eye on him. Nick, say Princely's last name.
Umanmielen.
I think he has a chance to sneak into the first round. So think Harold Landry, Christian Fulton, AJ Brown. Those are the guys that the Titans have gotten that were graded as first round picks, slipped out, got into the second round. I'm not interested in Deion Walker as much. I think Nick Scorton goes in the first round. I want to ask you guys about Walter Nolan, because I think Walter Nolan might be the most talented athlete in this event this week.
I'll just call the shot. When it's all said and done, he's going to be a top 10 pick.
I have him 10th in my big board right now.
He's going to be a top 10 pick.
He's the best athlete here in this entire game. I want to ask you about Jeffrey Simmons' future.
I was going to bring that up because you said, if you don't have a third round pick, it means you picked a quarterback, or that's the other way to get extra draft picks. I don't think they do it, but that's the other way to get extra draft picks. He's the only player on the team you can get a top 100 pick for right now, I would say.
I agree. I just think that there's a chance that Jeffrey Simmons is moved before the draft. You have extra capital. If you move down and you're picking, or if you get an extra pick somehow and you're in that teen range, I think Walter Nolan is a guy Titans fans need to pay attention to here in Mobile.
If I were the Tennessee Titans and I'm running their front office PR, the one thing I would avoid doing is trading your best and most beloved player on one side of the ball and immediately replacing him with a first-round pick who is supposed to fill his spot.
Perhaps in the mid-teens?
I would avoid doing that.
I hear you. There's a really good defensive line class, though.
It is.
It's a very good defensive line.
And again, I think the world of Walter Nolan. One of my player comps for him is Jeffrey Simmons. But again, everybody's player comp for Treylon Burks was AJ Brown. It's not as simple as it looks sometimes. But that would be a heck of a player to pair with T'Vondre Sweat if they choose to do that.
I'm really pissed off that you called top 10 on him, because that's like how I've been feeling about this the entire time.
We can agree on stuff.
Genuinely. No, but I wanted to do it first.
Okay. You want to call a different shot? Because I got a question that actually relates to the Senior Bowl. If you guys are calling your shot, there is one player in Mobile this week who will be a Tennessee Titan come April 28th or whenever the draft ends. Who is the most that guy's a Titan player in Mobile?
But we have a whole new front office.
Just a guess.
All right, JT, you go first.
Oh wow, putting me on the spot.
I have not thought about this.
I've got my answer if you need me to vamp.
No,
you go
first.
You go. Me? Wait. Okay. He's one of my favorite players, most interesting players to watch this week. And I don't know how they would be doing it, I think, because I don't think he'll rise as high as this second round pick right now. But if the Titans were to also get into that third round there, Ole Miss teammate Jared Ivey is a guy who I think
like him.
Who I think
what makes him a Titan? Like,
you mean just like you feel it? I was going more just like positional value and what they need right now. It makes sense that if they did find a third round pick, like Jared Ivey feels like he could slot in right where Harold Landry is right now. But just going off like vibes, and he feels like a Titan.
Kyron Lacy.
Jared Ivey's a really good dude, by the way. I covered him.
Very good. He's a very good
I
player.
covered him at Ole Miss for a little bit. He's a very good dude.
I like Jared Ivey. I like the Stanford wide receiver in the second round. It feels like to me if he's there, I'm going with him.
Honestly, we kind of joked about you mentioned the Packers. It's hard as someone who's really followed that team closely as a fan. Like it's hard not to see what they've done building a roster and see some of that being brought here and thinking like, again, not to go back to an Iowa State receiver, but like Jalen Noel feels like a third round Jaden Reed. Like that's what he feels like. That's how I think he can play. I think he seems like a player they're not going to draft. They're going to go edge and offensive line with their first 2 picks. They get some extra picks by trading back or trading Simmons or whatever, and they got a third round option with a player like Noel, who's, he's a 4-4 guy, who's physical, he's not super tall, but he's not small, and he plays right away. To me, that's like it's a versatile, positionless receiver.
Yeah,
is what I feel like Green Bay is known for, and I feel like that's where. But that's not old Titans. That's new Titans.
Yeah. I'll go down to the late 5th round here, mid to late 5th round here for my pick.
The draft hasn't even started because it starts here.
It starts here.
Starts tomorrow morning.
Trademark.
You'll be familiar with this guy because he was just a really fun college football player to watch. Noel Williams. Noel Williams out of Cal. He's going to be a Titan.
Gonna be a Titan.
I just feel so confident in dude who I think he had like 9 or 10 pass breakups, 7 interceptions this year. He's got that 6'1" frame, super hyper physical, aggressive, productive Denard Wilson type corner. You go continue adding depth at that position. You draft Jarvis Brownlee again. 5th round pick. That's
late. Okay. What is today? The 27th of January? The Senior Bowl has not started. The practice has not started. They've only measured, which means the draft hasn't started. And you're saying a Cal defensive back you're guaranteeing will be a Tennessee Titan late 5th round.
If we're playing the call your shot game, you got to call a shot. I can't be like, oh, well, maybe. I'm saying it right now. If it's not him, it's the other Louisville corner. They're going to draft one of the two of them.
I do appreciate that you looked into the camera. Stoney says no measurement came in for Ayo Manor today. What are you worried about him? Is he did he die, Stoney? Like, I'm sure he's fine.
He might just not be participating.
Yeah, like I'm sure he's fine.
Then again, I'm falling to my knees in a Walmart again because
just very upset
they're
about
going to measure him at some point, whether it's at the combine or a pro day. Somebody will put a tape measurer near him. You're going to get it.
I feel like Tate. I feel like Tate Ratledge is a Titan.
Oh, I like that one. I don't think he's here.
No, he's not. But like, I'm just
he was on the roster. I don't think he made it to Mobile. But Tate Ratledge,
he's played like 48 games as a guard. He's
he's going to bring that mullet to Nashville, and he'll be on Broadway someday, and they'll be like, yeah, that's a good one. Tate Ratledge makes sense.
Speaking of Ratledge, we keep kind of skirting over that conversation, but with some of these tackles that could be there on day 2. It feels like the same way we're talking about a guy like the edge position, right? There's also a very, good argument to say, let's go get Bill Callahan as many of these guys in the day 2, early day 3 round as we possibly can right now. And I think you're going to see a lot of those. Gray Zabel is a guy that I really, really do like this week. Emory Jones, where he ends up, I think it's going to be really interesting on him. One of Stoney's favorites is Jack Nelson, the Wisconsin kid who is projecting right now as a 4th round kind of guy. Stone even says Jack Beck, the other TCU wide receiver, is a Titan. He's calling his shot right there.
There's like a 6'8" tackle from Oklahoma State who's probably going to be like a 7th round pick that also just kind of spiritually feels like a Bill Callahan guy.
That reminded me, you're talking about how good the running back class is. Like Ollie Gordon checked in at like 200, like 6'1", 235. Like that is an absurd size for Ollie Gordon. Doesn't Landon Jackson feel like a Titan?
See,
Is it just like white SEC players? I'm like, yeah, that's who's Tennessee Titan.
You're just describing the Detroit Lions.
That's what I'm saying. Like
that's who Amy loves. That's her girl up there running that franchise.
It is, but then again, like if there is a more Detroit Lions-esque defensive lineman.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's Jack Sawyer.
It's Jack Sawyer. So do they get the seconds? Do they get the cleanup there with like as Amy continues to try to build this franchise like the Lions, be like, we're gonna take your guy that we also think projects well as your team, but on mine.
So they're taking Malachi Starks to be their Brian Branch in the middle of the first round.
I would have so much fun watching Malachi Starks
He's
play
a
for the
great player.
Tennessee. He is so much fun to watch,
He's
guys.
a great player. There's so many really good players, and they could actually use this. I mean, honestly, if he's on the board and they're picking 18 or something crazy happens, I mean, that's a player that makes them immediately better and could be a position of need. So
I think there's a strong possibility they end up drafting a safety from an SEC powerhouse named Malachi. I just think it might be the other one.
Yep. And that's a fourth round grade?
Or fifth, somewhere in there.
Yeah, later.
I'm just reading you my most recent 7-round mock draft. Go to Tennessean.com. You'll see
go.
all of this stuff.
And while you're reading that, make sure you're listening to the Hot Read podcast while sitting at ML Rose or Shotgun Willie's Barbecue.
Eating a Gorgon Borgonzi burger.
Somebody suggested a crab patty in the. I mean, you could do a crab cake burger. It's not. There's worse things you could do with some sort of northeastern tie, I suppose. By the way, again, there is a large championship football game coming up in a couple of weeks, and I guess I'm not supposed to say it. I don't want to fight the NFL on trademark laws. So if you need to order food for that event and you're going to host a party, make sure you go to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. They got smoked wings, racks of ribs, pulled pork, sausage, you name it. Just pre-order it with them, and they'll take care of your entire party.
Talking about the Puppy Bowl, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. There's a cartoon. Isn't there a cartoon version of the game that's always on?
I'm talking about the only game that matters now, with the only good matchup, which is the
Lingerie Bowl. All right, so make sure you go check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Sinkers Beverages for all your needs on. Let's say you have a big holiday party where you watch something together. Sinkers Beverages. All right, so anything else here from Mobile that you guys are super excited to check out, and just sleepers, names? I know we've just kind of done this, but is there anything else you want to throw out there for the good folks?
I'm just interested to see how it won't pay off this week, but I keep going back to the idea that this Titans team had basically Brinker, Anthony Robinson, and a few scouts here last year, and it feels like this year it's a more cohesive effort with almost a lot of the Titans coaching staff, Chad Brinker, Mike Borgonzi. It feels a lot more cohesive and a full force effort, which of course it's tough for them to do that last year, but I'm interested to see how it plays out this time around and kind of being on the same page. I really am interested to continue to hear what they think about these prospects and where they can find some of this talent that's going to be impact players from day one. And I think that is a lot of the guys that you're going to have here at the Senior Bowl.
Nick, one of the things I'm working on this week is, and I think you'd appreciate sort of the like the bizarro geek corner sort of psychology of it all, which is, how do you know? We have you have government spooks that are hired to get background checks. We have analytics, we have data testing, we have S2 processing tests, we have tape, we have statistical analysis. We have every possible way we're going to watch them this week at practice, and people still bet their entire careers on Josh Rosen. So I'd like to know, like, how do you know? Because Borgonzi has talked about this, right? He said, we had red flags with Mahomes. We decided to value the other good stuff more. Turns out that was a good choice. How do you know when the scale is tipped in the right direction? I'm fascinated, and I think, to your point, JT, all those guys will be here this week. We'll have a chance to talk to them, I think, coming up tomorrow. So that's really what I'm interested in, Nick, is like, how do you know? You guys are all sitting around a room debating these players. You've got infinite amounts of information about them. How you still screw it up sometimes. Not them specifically, but.
No, and the deeply unfortunate reality of all of this is you don't. The people who are the best at this don't. Who were the last 3 or 4 people who Bill Belichick used a first-round pick on before his time with the...
Was it Jacoby Myers? No.
It was...
Who's the kid out of Arizona State? Who's the receiver out of Arizona State that I'm thinking
N'Keal Harry. They picked over A.J. Brown. I mean, the people who are legendarily good at this still kind of stink at this. And, like, being a good scout or being a good talent evaluator in a time where every jagweed with an internet connection can call themselves a talent evaluator, the scales are flattened. There is no minuscule advantage that one team has over everyone else. And at a certain point, it just becomes who's the best at guessing. And that's not to say that everybody's guessing. And that's not to say that there is no way to succeed. This isn't a futile process, but it's borderline futile at a point where you can look at a 5th or 6th round pick who hits, like a Puka Nacua, who works just because a system married with a coach, married with a quarterback. And then you can look at everybody who you've forgotten about, who at this time last year, we were sitting on a couch less extravagant than this and talking about, oh, so-and-so is going to be the next such and such. And we haven't said their name in 11 months.
We did say his name a lot for all the wrong reasons.
But so my grand point is to answer Braden's question as authoritatively as I can. You never know. You feel good about things, and then you hope. There's a lot of hope.
Jason does say, but it's not a coincidence that the same team keeps winning. To go back to Shohei Ohtani, maybe the greatest hitter, maybe the greatest baseball player on the planet, he gets out 65% of the time. That's just like that's just a fact about the greatest hitter on the planet right now. JT, what do you guys got coming up on Hot Read this week?
We've got every single day we're going to have a show. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm sure
Friday, Saturday,
maybe
Tuesday,
we'll
Wednesday, Thursday.
But we're doing that. Talking to a lot of guys around here. I've kind of not talking about Senior Bowl players, but talking to a lot of my friends over at Fantasy Points about the quarterback class, how much arm strength really does matter with these guys when you're talking about Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders. That's going to be coming out later this week. And just, a lot of other impromptu interviews that we have with these guys. So it's going to be a good week. I'm so excited.
Anything else? Tennessean for good journalism. Sinkers Beverages, if you're back there in Nashville, you got ML Rose, you got Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Hot Read Podcast. I think that's about it, guys. I think
I was going to say, Stoney isn't here, but if he was, he's going to be writing a lot on Stacking the Inbox this week. So go check out Stoney's draft evaluations.
I'm going to try to do what Nick does and throw some words on a digital page for Koharski. Or Paulina. I'm writing for Paulina this week.
Wonderful.
there she is. Other than that, let's go eat some oysters, boys. How about that? For Nick and JT, I am Braden. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Go to Sinkers, MO Rose, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. All the thumbs up, notifications turned on, all that great stuff. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out. We'll be back all week, and please stay tuned. We do appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.